HoopsHype released their list of the top shooting guards in the NBA, and Zach LaVine ranked in the top 10. Was that a fair ranking for Zach LaVine? We're going to take a look at that. Plus, Coby White talks about how he's ready to step into a leadership role for the Chicago Bulls, and we get our most positive update in regards to Lonzo Ball yet. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so Zach LaVine's ranking on the HoopsHype top shooting guards list has been a conversation point for a lot of Bulls fans. We're going to round out and look at the list. Zach LaVine was ranked in the top 5. Let's just go through the list. We're going to go through the full top 10. 1, Anthony Edwards at number 1. 2, Devin Booker, right? I think that's fair. You look at 3, Donovan Mitchell. Coming in at the 4 spot was Jaylen Brown. Coming in at 5 was Jalen Williams with the Oklahoma City Thunder, former teammate of Josh Giddey. At number 6, Desmond Bane. And then at number 7, Zach LaVine. Then you also have at 8, Austin Reeves. At 9, Jalen Green. And 10, Tyler Hero. Now, so there's some other players down there that are kind of questionable to me, things like that, like Bradley Beal all the way down at number 12, but Austin Reeves listed ahead of him. Devin Vassell, a solid two-way guard, listed at number 13. But that ranking for Zach LaVine at number 7, here's the thing. You guys know I've been, over the last couple of weeks or so, talking about how Zach LaVine there's from 2019 to the end of the 2022-23 season, there had only been 9 players to score more points than Zach LaVine. Period. Right? And while Zach LaVine, we know, has his flaws defensively, let's be clear here. That Zach LaVine's strong suit is still an elite strong suit in the NBA. That is why it's a lot, when you look at, the questions around his game and things like that, like Zach LaVine is a player that specializes in a skill that is needed in the NBA, and that is scoring, right? And so, he's not a terrible player as some people, and I do like that HoopsHype did rank him this high because this summer has been really kind of a dismantling of Zach LaVine in a lot of ways, kind of picking apart his game to make it seem like he's worse than what he is. He's a flawed player. He is on a ridiculous contract, which it gets more fair every year that goes by on top of the cap rising, but as well as other players signing much larger deals. You look at, for example, Lauri Markkanen's deal and Zach LaVine's deal. Lauri Markkanen, for example, has been taken away last season, has been hurt way more often than Zach LaVine. With that said, and has not really won games either being the lead man. He has put up some really good points. He was an all-star starter in the Western Conference, which is difficult to do. You give him a lot of credit for that. But this talking in conversation around Zach LaVine, like LaVine is a terrible basketball player, just isn't accurate, right? And he's not. And even on the defensive aspect of it, it's off-ball. He's terrible off-ball defender. He's pretty solid on-ball defender when it comes down to it. Now, solid is a thing, right? But he still is a player that can definitely help. The injury concerns around Zach, we've talked about that. 85% of the games that he's been available for, he's played in. And it's even higher than that when you look, if you take away the fact that the last season was the first season he's missed that amount of games since he first came to the Chicago Bulls. So, listen, Zach LaVine can put up nearly 25 points per game on a nightly basis. And that is something that is needed when he's a 3-level scorer that has some limitations. Now, you do have to build a team that's there to kind of overcome some of Zach's shortcomings, which, when he was paired with Lonzo Ball and had that type of perimeter defense, it helped a whole hell of a lot. But this is a player that's won a gold medal as a starter in the Olympics. This is all of that. And so when you constantly hear the things around and even some Bulls fans talking about Zach like he's terrible, he's not. And Zach LaVine will be a starter for this team next year, and he's going to start his season off with the Chicago Bulls. Hopefully he's able to recoup some of that value, and the Bulls could then go on and move him because that is still what the Bulls want to do. But it just comes down to Zach is not a terrible basketball player, and I hate that that's what the route that this conversation has gone around Zach. But, I mean, some of it is due to his own action. Some of it's due to, some of the things with the Bulls having bad teams around him. But, yeah, and you guys know, I've said it before many times. I'm not somebody who can blame it all, who tries to blame all the Zach LaVine shortcomings on front office or coaching and just say, well, it's not Zach. No, Zach plays a part in it. But you can't blame it all on Zach either because he's a player that is clearly being shown that he is not your number one. He is not the type of number one player that's going to elevate your team to get it to the level that you want to get to. But he is still a player that has an elite skill set that's needed in this league, and we'll see what comes of that. And maybe, hopefully, he comes into next season, he stays healthy, he plays well. But then when you look at the like, to take it outside of just the Zach LaVine part of the conversation, when you really look at this list, like, are we saying that Jalen Williams is a top 5 shooting guard in the NBA? Is that the point that it's come to right now? Is he a top 5 shooting guard in the NBA? Yes, he's young. He has extreme talent and still has yet to really uncover all of his upside. With that being said, as well. But again, with HoopsHype and the way that they kind of rank these things, they try to be transparent and say it really doesn't have anything to do with injuries or things like that. But we'll see, man. Jalen Williams did finish in 4th in the most improved voting last season, so that is what it is there. But, that's probably one of the question marks that I have here on this list. Me and Pat discussed this over on Locked on Bulls. He asked about Jaylen Brown being a shooting guard, and it's like, hey, that's the position that he plays. Like, we could talk about all day. Like, yeah, the position has changed a lot from what it was even a decade ago as far as the players you look at there. Desmond Bane, another player that I like Desmond Bane, but it's like his production is great, and it's the way the sum of those parts on the Memphis Grizzlies work. But I wouldn't have been mad if he was ranked lower on this. And this isn't saying that in comparison to Zach LaVine. I just mean kind of overall on the list as well. I honestly think that Zach LaVine, I'm surprised he's ranked 7th, not because of his skill level, but because of the fact he played in 25 games last season, and there's health concerns, things like that. Austin Reeves being listed. Is Austin Reeves a top 10 shooting guard in the NBA now? Is that where we've come to? I mean, listen, I make no mistake about it. Austin Reeves is a solid player. If the Bulls back when that deal was rumored to have gotten him back in a Zach LaVine trade, I wouldn't have been mad at it at all. But the Lakers, rightfully so, didn't want to give up a young asset, right, for that. But this is just a very interesting list when you look at the top 30 shooting guards in the NBA. They got Dante DiVincenzo at number 16, right? So I'm not too mad at, but ranked above Anthony Simons. Like, it's just it's a questionable list. I implore everybody to go check out this list and tell me what are some of the shocks for you as far as where players are ranked. Klay Thompson ranked all the way down at number 20. It's considering, even though Klay, for a down year for him, still averaging almost 18 points per game on solidly efficient shooting, solid there. But let me know what you guys think. This is always an interesting list, an interesting time of offseason, between offseason power rankings and those type of things. It always puts you in a weird place of like, hey, what's really going on here? What's really going on? But overall, to get it back on the topic of Zach LaVine, I hope that Zach LaVine proves a lot of doubters wrong. Not just because of hoping that it helps facilitate a deal or a trade away from the Chicago Bulls or anything like that, because no, it's not about that. It's not about that at all. But it's about the fact that Zach is not as bad as some of the conversation around him has made him seem to be. And for me, I always vote on underdogs. Always like for a player to have a reason to have a chip on their shoulder and try to prove people wrong. You guys know Petty Roosevelt in the building. And so I really hope that Zach is taking notice of this, but tries to do it within, because keep in mind, one of the knocks on you as well is how much do you contribute to winning. Fit in, be a good teammate, embrace this youth movement, because it can definitely help you get to either where you want to be, get more wins, and help ultimately quell some of that conversation around Zach LaVine. And I hope that a lot of people do come down to eating crow when it comes down to Zach LaVine. Now, I still have my doubts on how many games this Bulls team is going to win overall, but let's not act like Zach LaVine isn't one of the best shooting guards in the league, because he is, and he's been that for a while. And he grew that game here in Chicago, even through the midst of coaching changes, lineup changes, front office changes. Like the way that when we say that the Bulls haven't, when people ask, who have the Bulls developed? Zach LaVine is definitely developed in the Chicago Bulls uniform. Yes, he still has major flaws. Nobody can take that away. But it starts becoming, I think when you get into situations like this, it starts becoming at what can we really go through with a fine-tooth comb and really trying to talk about that as if it's just their game. Like Zach LaVine is a 3-level scorer, flirted with being a 50-40-90 player, and I hope that he can get to that. More than any type of points total or anything like that for Zach LaVine, come in, be efficient, be solid in your role, fit in with what this team's trying to do, because I think this can be a fun team, a team that likes to get out in transition, play a little bit faster. Those are all things that can help Zach LaVine as well throughout this journey of him trying to fix what's going on with his game and the conversation around his game and things like that. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. As always, I love to hear from you guys. But let's get into this next topic. With the Chicago Bulls going much younger and still planning on moving on from veterans, either Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine. A lot of people have asked about where's the veteran leadership coming from for the Chicago Bulls. Well, Coby White has an answer to where that veteran leadership is coming from. He thinks it's coming from him. He said this.
Yeah, so me and Ayo have these conversations all the time, both of us, for real. Ayo, me and him are the same age, but he's wise beyond his years. So he hasn't been in the league as long, but, his IQ and his feel for the game is superior than his age, and I would say. So me and him both been trying to take that to that next step as being, as leadership. Because like obviously said, DeMar's gone. We got a younger team this year, so for us, we're trying to take steps in that category. For me, I learned from DeMar, he always led by example. He wasn't always the loudest guy in the room. He wasn't always the most talkative guy in the room. But if we had a meeting, he was there early. He was there one of the first ones there. If we had a bus time, he was one of the first ones there. He was never late to a meeting. He was always ready to go. When the game came, it was always about business. And the way that he took, me, Dose, DT, Pat under his wing, it kind of shed light on, the things that what I'm looking forward to when I get older. And that can start now for me. Like you said, Modest is only 19. So DeMar really took us genuinely under his wing, and he wants what's best for us. And now, even though we're not on the same team anymore, I was with him in L.A. So, when I was out in L.A., we played together, whatever, we hung out. So, I feel like that's a relationship that's going to last a lifetime.
And I love the confidence of Coby White because let's face it, Coby White is at this place now where he is a veteran. I know he's still extremely young at 24 years old, but when you look at it, Coby White has been in the NBA since 2019 when he was drafted. He is going into his 6th year in the NBA. And that is a big test for Coby White. This is where you start seeing, if those young players do start turning into leaders, this is around the place where you start seeing them grab that leadership on. And on top of Coby White growing in his role with the Chicago Bulls, being probably, last year, a lot of times the go-to guy in scoring, DeMar was that in the fourth quarter, right? And now I'm stepping up. And I love that he talked about the relationship between DeMar. If you guys go back, I've been saying for years, whenever DeMar did move on from the Chicago Bulls, the lessons that he taught the young guys here was going to be things that they held on to for all of their careers. And that is basically what Coby White is saying here as well. And he is trying to impart what he learned from DeMar DeRozan onto a Modest Bucilis, onto a Julian Phillips, onto a Dalen Terry, who also got to, be under DeMar DeRozan as well. But this is the conversation that you want to have. Now, he has to prove it on the basketball court as well. And that's the thing with Coby. But when you look at Coby and just how he performed last year, it was a great time. It was been a while since we've seen a player really step up in the way that Coby White had and really kind of, prove a lot of his doubters wrong. Keep in mind, this is a guy that 2-3 years ago, a lot of Bulls fans were saying we needed to trade Coby White that offseason to go out and get a guard. And so, a big. And so when you look at it, the thing that I'm looking at for Coby for leadership, right? Yes, the vocality. And I love that he talked about, well, DeMar wasn't always the most loud guy in the room, but when he did talk, that people listened. And so that can be Coby, but I think Coby even more so, he's come a long way since the Clap It Up, right? A long way since then, where that kind of put it over the top of Bulls fans just being over Coby White. But when you look at the 55 games before the All-Star break that Coby White played, he averages 19 points per game on 46% shooting, 39% shooting from three-point range, almost 5 rebounds, 5 assists that he averages well, almost a steal per game. And he only turned the ball over in that 2.2 times. Now, while he did, the turnovers went down, 1.8 per game, but after the All-Star break, Coby White only averaged 18 points per game on 41% shooting and 32% shooting from three-point range. We know that Coby White hit a wall, right? At some point last year, between all the clutch games that the Chicago Bulls played, he was leading the league in minutes until he went down for that extended period in time. Him and DeMar DeRozan were like number 1 and number 2. And then he ended up taking that, not really getting back into those heights. But, Coby White, 36 minutes per game last season. What does Coby White need to do to be that leader for the Chicago Bulls? On the court, he needs to be more of what he was. And I think that this pairing between him and Josh Giddey, the times that Coby does have the ball in his hands, him growing as a distributor, but I think that the off-ball game of Coby White, is that him growing in that is going to be hugely important for his success this season as well. If Coby White can grow as an off-ball creator, right? As far as like, how do you move? How do you cut to the lane? How do you still get buckets when the ball isn't in your hands? That's going to be important for his growth. Now, I'm not saying take the ball completely out of Coby's hands. You do need to have times where Coby White is absolutely being that ball handler for you. And I think that the Bulls would be crazy not to do it, but it is a Billy Donovan coach team. Who can we say what Billy is and isn't going to do that makes sense or not? But Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, these guys taking the leadership role that's needed. I also think hearing that, I think that should be the nail in the coffin on Zach LaVine's just not a leader, and that's fine. You don't have to be a leader of your team, even if you are the best scorer on your team. We'll see if he still is, because Coby White is coming for that title, right? But ultimately, like as we saw, Coby White laid the blueprint of him starting to become a star. And I know some Bulls fans think he's a star already. I got to see it done more than one season before I'm ready to call somebody a star. That's just my personal opinion and view on it. But this is where you want to see Coby start hitting those strides at. When you look at the month to month, the month of October last year for Coby, 9.8 points per game. The month of November, 15.3. The month of December, 22.6. The month of January, 22.1. And then it started going down after that, right? So you gotta maintain it. And that's the thing that we need to see from Coby, because now teams are game planning for you. And that you and Zach LaVine are going to carry that scoring load a lot in that starting lineup for the team. So you're going to be on that team scouting report and how you grow in that area and step up in those moments. I've talked about several times who steps up now in the clutch for the Bulls. The Bulls won 27 of their 39 games last season were in the clutch. And a lot of that was DeMar DeRozan, his ability to get to the free throw line, hit tough shots. Now, that's on you, Coby, because, and not to say that Zach LaVine can't grow that part of his game as well. I hope that he can. But we've seen Zach LaVine. He makes some mistakes in the clutch, and that's fine. That's just, he's not a ball handler in those situations. But now that you have that ball handler in Josh Giddey, Coby, how do you grow your game in closing out games with your scoring prowess? That's what we need to see from Coby White. On top of the leadership, on top of all these things, this Bulls team is getting younger. And so when you look at players as we're getting younger that have somebody like Coby White, right? They're growing and ready to step into that leadership role. It's important. Coby is heading into his prime. And he's going to get another deal, right? He has 1 year left on his deal. After that, he'll be 25, 26 years old at that point in time. You're heading into your prime. And the Bulls, you then be eligible for a big contract extension. It's your time to show that not only because of your production on the court, but because of the leadership that you bring to this team that's going through a new phase, that it's time to bet on Coby White. And so he showed a lot of that last season, but we need to see a refinement of that and taking it to the next step up, because Coby has still a lot to untap in his game to take it to the next level. And hopefully that's going to continue to be done in a Bulls uniform, because some of you guys, in talking about trading Coby White, tripping. But it's all up to Coby White. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think that Coby is ready to step into a leadership role for the Chicago Bulls? Do you trust him to be that leader for the Chicago Bulls? If not, who do you see being that? Is it Zach LaVine? Do you think that with what Zach LaVine has gone through, maybe he steps up as the leader? Do you think it's going to be, somebody unexpected that steps up as that leadership role? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. But before we go, we'd be remiss to not talk about the update to Lonzo Ball. I did an emergency episode, a breaking news basically episode after this news dropped, but I didn't release it as a podcast, so I got to catch up the podcast listeners. So Lonzo Ball was cleared for 5-on-5 activities. It's still scrimmages. This is still a far away from being returning to the actual NBA court. But this is the best news that we've gotten so far on Lonzo Ball since his initial injury. Reportedly, the thing that I like so much in this report is that he's gone through 1-on-1s to 2-on-2s to now 5-on-5s, and they slowly ramped him up over the last couple of months, and he suffered no setbacks. That's the important part of this, the no setbacks part. Now, that still leaves a long road ahead for Lonzo Ball before he's ready to get back in. He's cleared for 5-on-5 contact scrimmages, and he's going to go into that, and they're going to put him through testing and things before he's ultimately cleared. Now, while he's had no bumps in the road, that does lead him into a place where he's on that projection, but it's still a long way to go. And I've seen a lot of Bulls fans take that and think that, oh, Lonzo's clear for 5-on-5. He's going to be ready to start at the end of the season, by the beginning of the season. That's not necessarily true. And keep in mind as well that when Lonzo Ball is returned, he's going to be on a minutes restriction. He's going to probably play back-to-backs, at least initially, probably for the first half of the season before they trust him to even do that, right? And that's going to limit his role as well. Looking at Jonathan Isaac is a big player that you can look at on how this return game kind of goes. Jonathan Isaac, while he did turn into one of the better perimeter per minute defenders in the NBA last season, when you look at his long road to recovery, he still averaged like 16 minutes per game. So you're looking at that cap for Lonzo Ball at averaging between 10 to 15 minutes per game is, I think, what you're going to see initially. And the Bulls have already said in this release, a Bulls source, that the Bulls are not considering moving on from Josh Giddey as the starting point guard. They acquired Josh Giddey to be the starter. Josh Giddey will be the starter. So You Lonzo Ball stands that are still hoping that Lonzo Ball is somehow going to return back to himself. That's a different thing. Being healthy does not mean a full, because that's just cleared to play basketball. You still have to get back to NBA conditioning. Your muscles got to still adjust, right? That is something that we see. A large part is that those muscle spasms, those muscle injuries that's going to, not injuries, but that tightness that's going to leave him to sitting some games because of getting back to NBA basketball. And so those are things that you have to look at. It's going to be a long road before Lonzo is fully, if he ever gets back to that Lonzo Ball. It's probably not going to happen in this first year. So people that now hear that Lonzo Ball is cleared and think automatically, oh, we're off to the races, Lonzo's back. That's not the case. And that for anyone who's still holding on to the number one team in the East when the Bulls are that, go back and look at that. The Bulls are already starting to come back down to earth. There are a lot of COVID going on. It was a week in Eastern Conference, and the Bulls were a new team. The Bulls are already starting to come back down to reality even before that game against the Warriors when Lonzo and Zach went down. So it's not not as quick as just getting back out there and getting back to being that player. It's going to take some time, and it could take a year or more. Like Sean Livingston talked about that it took him 3 years before he really felt comfortable back being on the basketball court. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily Lonzo's future, but he has two operations that nobody has come back and made a successful NBA return to. He is already getting to the place of breaking new ground for this type of injury in the NBA. If he's cleared and ready to go, that's already doing something historic. Give Lonzo Ball some time before we put those expectations of him being right back to the Lonzo Ball that went down when he initially did. But we'll see what Lonzo Ball brings this season. I do think that Lonzo Ball, we've already heard the Bulls were taking calls to see if they can move Lonzo Ball's contract. I would not be surprised if Lonzo Ball does get back healthy, looks solid, if he's ended up being moved. I wouldn't be surprised on that at all. But we'll see what the future holds for Lonzo. I'm overall happy whether his future's in a Bulls uniform or not. I'm just happy that the guy seems to be accomplishing his dream of getting back on the NBA basketball court. And we'll see what happened there. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.